in the early hours of the 26th of February 2016. Residents of Pentyrch witnessed an event that would change their lives and rock the international UFO community. Witnesses describe a vast pyramid-shaped vessel forming over a row of trees. The huge craft was outlined in brilliant bright lights. Then things got even stranger. An aerial armada of military planes and helicopters engaged the UFO in a terrifying battle, culminating in its apparent destruction. Witnesses remain convinced what they saw was extraterrestrial, but the official line taken by the military? It was a training exercise. Could this be pointing to a cover-up? As an ex-MOD official himself, Nick Pope is perfectly placed to know how the authorities react in such situations.
You're dealing with these inherently secretive organizations whose default mindset is not to share this information. It always worries me when you come up against the secrecy. I mean, that's the most frustrating thing of all.
If the Pentyrch UFO incident is being covered up by the military, we'll stop at nothing to get to the bottom of what is surely one of the most sensational UFO sightings in British history. Sarah, this is an amazing story. It sounds so dramatic. How come I've not heard of this?
I am really curious about this one. Again, we're talking about a triangular-shaped object, multiple witnesses, bright lights. It's something we hear a lot in all these unexplained cases. What I am curious about, though, is the lack of hard evidence. Where's the photographs? Where's the video? This was 2016.
Yeah, but I mean, they're talking about firefights in the sky, the military being involved. Surely the military would release a statement about this, wouldn't they?
Potentially, yes. The fact is, we've got to investigate this. We've got to trust what people are saying.
OK, who do we talk to first?
Well, we need to talk to a witness, and one of those witnesses, her name is Kaz Clark. She saw things firsthand. I believe this experience changed her whole life.
Tell us what you saw that night.
OK, well, it was really the military that had attracted my attention to everything, with the planes that they had in the air for 3 nights prior to its arrival. I was just about to go back into my home when I heard a huge plane coming. It sounded like a missile. So I went back out, and the first red light was visible high above the trees behind my house. So I called for one of my neighbours, and we ran over to the gate. And this one red light turned into 3 red lights that was the very pinnacle of an enormous pyramid. It came through a black veil into our world. It was turning very slowly anti-clockwise. When it got into the upright position, it fired this really bright green object out of the top, like a big bright green star, and that moved across to the trees, just stopped there, just rocking gently backwards and forwards. I stood on the 5-bar gate to get a better look and exclaimed that it's landing, thinking it was coming down. And it ejected what I described as a hand of lightning. After that, we saw the helicopters flying low across the field on our left-hand side in a triangular formation on an interception course with this green object. And after the helicopters had gone out of sight, there were these 2 barrel-shaped objects. Absolutely silent, about the size of a small car, red in colour, and the insides appeared to be moving. It was turning in on itself, a bit like a cake mix, you know. And one of these red objects stopped above the hedge, about 20 feet away from me. The only thing I could think to do was to wave. And I felt it scan me. Within 24 hours, it turned my hair white. Now, these objects moved off in different directions. We walked back to my home, which is about 30 seconds away, and we heard an enormous explosion. And the explosion was so loud, so big, people were shaken awake in their beds. They had 20 military gunships in the air. C-17s, C-130s, Chinook helicopters, Apaches. This was not an exercise. This was real life over a residential area, and we're not allowed to know.
Later that morning, Kaz began to post on social media, stating that this was no exercise and in fact a major UFO event. Soon after, she was contacted by a mysterious man with a list of questions. What did they say to you, Kaz?
They wanted to know who I'd spoken to and how exactly I had spoken to them. So I agreed to meet with them and was immediately threatened with perhaps a fatal car accident. They asked me, wasn't I worried about what was going to happen to me and my family? Accidents happen all the time. What did I want? Which I thought was a very strange question to ask. So whoever this person was part of what happened that night.
It's chilling, it's powerful. How do you feel now? How do you feel telling us your story now?
It still affects me. I can't say it doesn't. It made me question absolutely everything, because these things are real. And our military know they're real, and our military are actively pursuing and shooting these things down.
Our problem with this at the moment in trying to investigate it is your account of it is so vivid and so well told. We've got no evidence at all that it actually happened. When you waved, why didn't you reach for your phone? Why didn't you take video evidence of it? Why didn't you take photographs? I know...
We tried.
You tried?
We tried. Our phones were completely dead. Completely dead. I don't know if that was something to do with the E3 Sentry.
I'm actually blown away. We're going to see if we can play some small part in trying to get to the bottom of it. But your story
It might help that I took 3 polygraph tests to prove that what I said I saw was real.
Kaz, have you got the polygraph data?
I do, yeah.
Can you send us that?
Yes, I can.
That is the scariest story I've heard in, well, forever.
My concern is, are we at risk investigating this? When you hear what's happened to her?
I've got no idea, but I'm going to look into it because that is the most harrowing, disturbing story I've ever heard in my life, and so believable.
She was so genuine, she was so affected. I mean, it could still be military activity. We don't know what's happened.
But the fact that people try to close it down, the shadowy forces, this is getting really interesting. Okay, Sarah, we've got witnesses who say they saw a vast pyramid-shaped aircraft in the sky being chased and shot down by RAF jets, by Chinook helicopters, by Hercules helicopters, C-13s, C-17s. I mean, you're talking about the Air Force in the sky. We spoke to Kaz Clark.
And that was a powerful interview. I'll give you that. It was chilling.
It was harrowing.
She was so affected by what's happened to her. However, Craig, I like to go by the motto, trust then verify. I trust her, but we haven't verified it yet. We need to see more evidence.
The dramatic events of the night of the 26th of February 2016 were just the beginning of this extraordinary story. What was discovered the morning after provides more vital pieces of the puzzle. At 9 AM, Kaz, along with some of their neighbours, headed straight for where they believed the UFO had come down. A densely forested area 4 miles west of Pentyrch, in Smilog Woods. Kaz, what did you discover?
60-foot trees had been snapped in half, mid-trunk, as far as the eye could see. Trunks 12 to 14 inches thick had been snapped. We followed the debris trail through to its end, where we found the impact site. There were all these burn marks and scrape marks on the surrounding trees, but the burn marks were white, not black, and a very pungent smell in the air.
The location of the damaged trees is less than half a mile from the Royal Glamorgan Hospital. And we have an email from an ex-staff member of the hospital, dated December 2017, describing hearing an extremely loud explosion and smelling unusual sulphurous odours in the early hours of February 26, 2016.
It shook patients awake in their beds in the hospital. The smoke was so dense it was going in through the vents and through the windows. Car alarms were set off in the streets.
Without a doubt, something significant happened that night, and with little information forthcoming from the military, we need to take a closer look at the evidence, photographs, and footage from that time. This is the Smilog Woods. And let's have a look at that. That's a path of broken trees. So it's like something's crashed through it.
Some sort of aircraft, potentially, or an explosion.
All at the same level, as though something's come down right through them. Snap them, snap them.
It could potentially be wind damage.
Normally when the trees come down in the wind, they come down from the
Lower,
roots, and
yeah.
they've got a big root thing, and that's all full
Lightning
of mud.
strike, potentially, but on so many trees. There's one other thing I want to investigate as well. Bear with me.
Yeah.
Tectonic activity.
We'll investigate that as well. Over the days and weeks that followed the 26th of February, rows of tents appeared on farmland close to where the UFO had been seen, and a mysterious team of people began an apparent survey of the area.
They told me they were doing field research, and they were using some kind of large laptop device, but it was twice the width of a laptop in a metal case. I took some covert pictures of their camp, and they were doing a fingertip search of the field where this pyramid came in. And as we walked past, every single one of them would stand up and watch you until you were out of sight. Like some weird cult 60s movie. It was really spooky.
It's undeniable that something's happened here. But if this was a real military operation, a real military clean-up, they wouldn't be able to get close enough to take photos like that.
What are these people doing? The evidence is building, and highly suggestive of a cover-up. But still, there's no evidence of the presence of an actual UFO. It all relies on Kaz Clark's testimony. I'm keen to see the results of her polygraph. Lie detector tests aren't foolproof, with accuracy estimated to be between 80 and 90%. But the results could help us build a clearer picture. Let's see what the answers were. No deception indicated. Truthful. Kaz Clark certainly believes she's telling the truth. The secret to this case surely lies with the military. What are they not telling us? We need to speak to someone else. And UFO investigator and journalist Gary Jones has spent the last 5 years trying to get answers.
He's been on this case since it happened.
Hi Gary, Craig and Sarah here. So did you approach the Ministry of Defence?
Yes, we approached the Ministry of Defence, as well as something called the Joint Forces Command, which is also the RAF.
And how have you found dealing with them?
I found dealing with them quite frustrating. They answer their questions, and then we give them more questions for the answers and the evidence we find. And they change their story, I would say, a good half a dozen times at least.
Okay, I've got a bit of the Ministry of Defence reply here. You asked, a green light was seen by witnesses in these fields, later being followed by military airplanes. What was this green light doing there, please? Gunfire and explosions were heard at the same time. Did the military shoot at anything during this exercise? Did this object crash into Smilog Woods? This is their reply. This letter is to inform you that the MOD holds information relating to your request, but that we believe that some of the information falls into the scope of Section 26 of the FOI Act. They're saying is you've got valid questions, but we're not telling you.
It's kind of like a way for them to just say, you know, sweep it all aside. They know that people have seen the events of that night, but when we've actually gone right to them and say, look, you know, can you provide answers? They just come back and say, it's not in the public interest. We cannot reveal or disclose it to you.
Perhaps it's a security risk and they're not telling you because they're trying to protect you.
I understand that certain things may have to be kept secret, but people were put at risk by this, you know. We have a right to know, you know, if we're in any danger, any threat. I don't think that this is something they have the right to keep quiet, to be perfectly honest with you.
And how does it make you feel knowing that you can't answer this just yet?
Well, it's quite frustrating, actually, because obviously we have all this evidence that clearly shows it was not a military exercise and that they even prepared and know that these things are coming because of the way that those military spotter planes came out the few days before. We have radar tracks of them going around the country and then finally settling on the Pentyrch Fields area for 3 days and nights with planes taking in turns, circling and doing zigzag patterns. So they know that these things are real. I think it is time for them to come clean and say, you know, what's going on.
What you've got here is a really credible and really powerful story. All we know is that this is something that we can't explain.
When you take Clark's testimony, as well as the polygraph test and everything else that we've done, this was clearly a UFO event. What we believe this one is an interdimensional craft that came from somewhere else. This thing came through a portal in the sky. And I know maybe that's hard for people to accept, but this is where the case has led us.
It's the same story. These bright lights, it's the military then coming in, confusing their stories, and it seems to be like there's almost a pattern.
There's people keeping secrets. There's a lot that we don't know. There's a lot we're not being told. How do we move this case forward?
We need to dig deeper.
So far, we spoke to Kaz Clark, who gave an amazingly compelling story, quite traumatic for her. She saw a pyramid-shaped spaceship in the sky being hounded by the British Airforce, helicopters, Herculeses, Apaches. There was an E-3 Sentry plane, all circling this spaceship. She says she saw it get blown out of the sky.
It made me question absolutely everything, because these things are real. And our military are actively pursuing and shooting these things down.
We've got videos of what she says is the crash site. Now, look at this. Something's come down right through them. Snap them, snap them. We've got photographs of what she says is a clean-up operation. So that's, what are these people doing?
It's undeniable that something's happened here.
We spoke to Gary Jones, who said the Ministry of Defence tried to shut him down, issued him with a Section 26.
They've changed the story at least, I would say, a good half a dozen times at least.
So I've got the weather report in. The wind speed, could the wind have knocked those trees over? But actually it just says a gentle breeze that evening, so that's now gone. As well as earthquake seismic activity. Now bear with me on this one. Sometimes when you get earthquakes, and we don't know what causes this, you get lights in the sky. These are known as earthquake lights, perhaps caused by rocks rubbing together, generating an electric charge, often mistaken for UFOs, but we now know there was no seismic activity that evening, so we can rule out natural phenomena.
But still, we've got no hard physical evidence.
Well, that's the problem. We've got this great story from Kaz, but no evidence to back it up. However, if we can manage to get hard physical evidence, this will blow this case out the water.
The Wales UFO encounter of the 26th of February 2016 is a most intriguing and frustrating case. We have the highest quality witness testimony. We have inexplicable damage to trees. We have evidence of an explosion. And a paper trail suggestive of a cover-up. but still no hard evidence of the existence of the UFO itself.
Where's the photographs? Where's the video? This was 2016.
The next logical step is to compare the Pentyrch incident with other comparable military cover-ups to see if they follow a similar pattern. And one major UFO case that was never disclosed to the public took place over RAF Cosford at 1:15 AM on March the 31st, 1993.
So earlier, I caught up with Nick Pope, former MOD investigator and UFO expert, and what he doesn't know about this case isn't worth knowing. Can you just talk me through what happened in Cosford back in 1993?
Well, the so-called Cosford incident was extraordinary, and it fell right in the middle of my tour of duty on the MOD's UFO desk. And I came into work the particular morning, and the phones were ringing off the hook, and over the next few hours, report after report after report came in. Not just from the public, but from military officers, from police.
And what did people witness?
A common theme was a huge triangular-shaped craft that was capable of moving from a very slow speed or a virtual hover to high Mach speeds. What I was able to do was eliminate some of the conventional explanations that usually explain UFOs. So, for example, we knew about all the flight paths in the United Kingdom. We knew, obviously, where the commercial airlines flew, where any military training was undertaken. We could determine that we had nothing in the particular areas where these UFOs were seen. We knew that there were no weather balloon launches. We just went through all the things that people commonly misidentify, and we were able to eliminate them one by one.
Could it not be possible, or that this is technology that the general public doesn't know about just yet?
Yes, it could be possible. But I think you hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, the public wouldn't know about it, but we in the Ministry of Defence would.
And what was your conclusion then?
The summary of my investigation concluded there is strong evidence that on 31st of March 1993, an unknown object or objects was operating over the United Kingdom, and clearly this is of defence significance. All the data suggest technology ahead of ours.
Why weren't you able to push this further?
There's a lot of bureaucracy in the Ministry of Defence. There are a lot of, I think I would say, fairly sort of conventional thinkers rather than people thinking outside the box. But certainly there was skepticism at the senior ranks in the military and the civil service, with the defence ministers, of course, the politicians. And there were always people higher up the chain who were going to shut this down.
Despite Nick Pope declaring the Cosford event an incident of considerable defence significance, no public statement on it has ever been issued by the Ministry of Defence. It's therefore reasonable to assume the military are doing the same in South Wales. The Pentyrch incident cannot be dismissed. Well, Sarah, this started out as a simple investigation. This has got so much bigger. Where do we go from here? How are we going to find our truth in this investigation?
Well, there's one person we need to speak to, one person who might hold the key.
We've seen the broken trees, it wasn't windy, there's been no seismic activity in the area. They've snapped, they've been severed. What concerns me is that we've got the MOD issuing a Section 26, which means they don't want to talk about this. We've got shadowy organisations leaning on Kaz to tell her to keep her mouth shut.
I mean, it's certainly interesting, it's certainly building up as a credible case, but we need to speak to one more person. Emlyn Williams. He's another UFO investigator.
Hi, Emlyn. Craig and Sarah here.
Hi, great to be with you.
Emlyn has dedicated the last 5 years of his life to this case. And he's convinced that he's got evidence that proves something extraterrestrial did crash in Smilog Woods in February 2016. He's carried out a detailed electromagnetic survey of the entire crash site and uncovered an anomaly that could be the smoking gun. Can you explain to me what electromagnetic readings are?
Well, it measures the electromagnetic fields in an environment. And we measured the area below where the object that Kaz saw, and it did show a different reading to any other area. There did seem to be a effect in the EMF field.
An electromagnetic field, or EMF, is one of the 4 fundamental forces of nature. While high levels of EMF can be caused by natural events like thunderstorms, they can also be caused by the exposure of natural objects to as yet unexplained upsurges in electromagnetism.
When did you collect your EMF sample, your electromagnetic field sample?
That was in October 2017, so it was a good 18 months afterwards.
18 months afterwards.
Yeah.
And how did that compare with your control sample?
Well, the only control sample we had really was in other areas where we
So you didn't have a control sample from the incident?
No, we could only compare it with other areas where we're neutral areas, if you like.
What do you believe it was?
Well, I believe it wasn't military, put it that way.
Let's be plain. So you think it was something not of this world?
Yeah. Where it came from, I couldn't say. But what the witnesses saw don't correspond to any sort of vehicle or craft that the military possess, as far as we know. We find that difficult to believe that it was primarily a military exercise on its own. In a built-up area involving what seemed to be explosions near a hospital. And there's lots of other areas which aren't populated where military exercises do occur. Why are they doing it in a populated area in the early hours of the morning? Because there was a plane flying around for 3 days prior. It seems to me that they were waiting for something to happen. They had some kind of information that they knew something was going to occur in that locality, but they didn't know exactly when.
But do you not think we're jumping to conclusions somewhat with this? Do you really think we've got enough evidence to say this was something which is nothing to do with the military? This was something not of this earth?
All I can say is that it's a pretty amazing case. It's one of the best documented cases that we've got. And the witness testimony stands on its own.
Would you be satisfied with a more earthly explanation?
Yeah, I've got no axe to grind. We've got to rule out what it could be first, whether it's military, satellites, meteors, and what have you. And whatever's left at the end of the day is what we've got to accept.
Well, Emlyn, we've done some of that research. It was just a gentle breeze that night, so it wasn't caused by any weather systems. There was no seismic activity, so it wasn't caused, there was no earthquakes. So it still leaves something that's very, very baffling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Emlyn.
Thank you.
Well, Sarah, I don't think his evidence brought our investigation forward.
For me, we're going to have to rule out these electromagnetic field readings. It wasn't a scientifically conducted test. It was 18 months after the incident, so it doesn't help the investigation. But Kaz's case was so compelling that I'm still torn with this.
For now, hard proof that a pyramid-shaped extraterrestrial craft visited Pentyrch in South Wales in 2016 still eludes us. But just as our investigation is drawing to its conclusion and we prepare to reach a verdict, news just in. I'd like to show you something that the US Navy have just confirmed in real time as we film. they've confirmed that this is a genuine recording of a pyramid-shaped UFO captured by Navy personnel. Let's look at this footage. Filmed by the crew of the USS Russell in July 2019, the US Navy has now confirmed its authenticity. Incredibly, it shows what they claim is a UFO tracking alongside US Navy ships. And just like the craft described by Kaz Clark, it's a pyramid shape. This extraordinary footage was obtained and released by investigative filmmaker Jeremy Corbell.
This is explosive information. This is probably the best UFO military filmed footage, certainly that I've ever seen, but I think also that the world has ever seen. There were a number of anomalous contacts, or what they call UAPs or UFOs, that swarmed these carriers. So what you're seeing is some of that footage. These are genuine unknowns.
Tell me what you think of this, Sarah. At one stage, to me, it becomes three-dimensional.
It could be natural phenomena.
But there, can't you see the three-dimensional aspect of it? I can sort of see.
Oh, it's kind of morphing. It's certainly credible. It's certainly something that I can't explain stood here right now.
What I'm wondering, though, has this added another layer to it? Do you think it's going to affect the decision?
But it's, I don't know. I am lost for words.
Never in my wildest imagination did I think we'd see an officially confirmed pyramid-shaped UFO. Almost exactly the craft described by our eyewitness Kaz Clark in Wales. Surely her testimony must now take on new significance. The Pentyrch case of February 2016 has taken us on a roller coaster ride. But now we must put our personal prejudice and bias to one side and let facts and science be our guide as we come to a final conclusion. Okay, so let's have a look at what we've got. The Welsh Roswell. Kaz said she saw pyramid triangular-shaped spaceships in the sky. I've just seen a pyramid-shaped triangular spaceship on the screen captured by the US Navy. And then there was all those broken trees, cracked halfway up their trunks. But there was no wind that night. There was no seismic activity that night. And then Kaz said she saw C-130s, Hercules helicopters, Apache helicopters, the E-3 Sentry plane, circling. It was happening for days beforehand, as though they thought something was going to happen. And Kaz, she passed 3 lie detector tests.
Yes, we were able to rule out weather-related activity, seismic-related activity, but there's still not enough credible evidence for me to say this was something extraordinary.
Yeah, but the Ministry of Defence issued a Section 26, which means something happened, but we don't want to talk about it. Now it's time to put our cards on the table. Was the UFO encounter over South Wales in 2016 extraterrestrial or not? What is your verdict?
Kaz's story was very compelling. She's clearly been affected by something that she cannot explain. We know she's honest. Yes, the MOD has come out and said something happened, but they can't discuss it. But it doesn't mean it's aliens coming to Earth. So with that in mind, I'm going to say this remains unsolved.
Okay, well, what I'm going to say is I really sort of believe Kaz. I thought his story was very well told, and she told it with so much emotion. She wasn't lying. Something definitely strange happened in those woods. It's just so unfortunate that we haven't got any photographic evidence. So for that reason, I'd like to make a plea. If you were in that area, and if you've got any more information about this, if you've got any video footage or mobile phone footage, if you're out there and you caught it, get in touch, because at the moment, I'm going to say the jury's out. This remarkable UK case raises as many questions as it answers. I'm 100% convinced something very strange happened that night in 2016 in Pentyrch, South Wales. And extraterrestrial or not, there's no doubt in my mind it's something the military don't want us to know about.